Welcome back to the Marvel Movie Minute, a daily podcast in which we explore the films of the Marvel Cinematic Universe 1 minute at a time. In this, our 5th season, we are looking at Joe Johnston's 2011 film, Captain America, The First Avenger. I'm Andy Nelson from the Next Reel Film Podcast.
I'm Pete Wright, and I do fondue.
Today we're talking about Minute 57, which begins with Steve telling Howard to get him in as close as he can, and ends with Steve telling them to turn this thing around and get the hell out of here. A lot of Steve talking in this minute. Back on the show today, we have Michael Gravagno, host of the podcast, The Superhero Show, and Movie of the Year. Hello.
Hello. Thank you so much for having me back on, despite what I said off air last time. I really appreciate it.
It wasn't close. It was close. We had to flip a coin to make that decision, but you're here and we're thrilled. All right, we are in this airplane. And it's really a conversational minute. A lot of stuff going on between Steve and Peggy, and then Peggy and Howard, and more Steve and Peggy. It is, there's a little love triangle thing going on here. Before we get to the love triangle, let's just talk about the beginning of this. This is the conversation that we left last time. Steve and Peggy were here talking about, the fact that they're up here and he's going to, they were looking at the map, and now they're talking about, you're going to be in trouble. You're going to be in more trouble, this whole thing. And of course, the shield. How does this play as far as the relationship goes, the relationship building between Steve and Peggy? Are you a Steve and Peggy fan, I guess, is our first question, Mike. Do you buy the relationship?
Do you stan Steve and Peggy?
I stan Steve and Peggy. I don't know if I have a Cap hat on right now. Cap's my guy. Was a huge fan of Agent Carter, the TV show, and the one shot. I love her as a character. I love Haley Atwell. So yeah, I'd say the only Marvel romance I care about is this one. None of the other ones have ever done anything for me, really.
What about Tony and Pepper?
Yeah, they exist. They sure do exist. They sure do talk fast at each other. But these two,
they do. It's a real Dawson's Creek.
I think because of these moments, right? Like we talked last week, there's maybe a glimmer in Peggy's eye. Like they do take these baby steps through, and because I respect Joe Johnston, because it's the 40s and I love screwball comedies, this scene specifically, the way they're like, you're going to be in trouble now, you're going to be even more trouble shooting people, it feels like it harkens back to that kind of era and kind of movie. And so I totally buy them, because it just slowly ratchets up to before they ever are like, wait, I think we're in freaking love with each other by the end of the movie.
Slow burn. And then we have Howard, who's sitting out there in the pilot seat, imagining he has a chance?
No. I think Howard he can get anybody he wants. I think he respects Peggy a lot, which I don't think Howard respects that many women, which means he's not going to try to sleep with her. I think Howard has some, backwards 1940s sexual politics.
Yeah.
And he's just doing this to mess with her. He's Howard, and to mess with Steve more than anything.
Oh, so you think that's why he's doing that? First of all, I just have to backtrack a little bit, because since you said that and you're like the fast-talking dame angle with Haley Atwell, I really think that they should have played that up and had her doing kind of like the Barbara Stanwyck, that Lady Eve sort of thing, or like
the Mid-Atlantic.
Yeah,
exactly. Like really playing that up with that thing. That would have been hilarious to have Haley doing the fast-talking dame angle with this character.
Mm-hmm.
It's fun seeing Howard doing that, but I guess I never really looked at it like he was intentionally doing it as a way to poke at Steve. So do you think that like Howard has had conversations with Peggy and kind of read that, she's kind of into this guy. I think I'm gonna use that to my advantage to kind of like, poke at him a bit.
I think he likes making everybody slightly uncomfortable, and he finds it funny. And
yeah, he's a sociopath.
Yeah, he's just thankfully on our side, right? They've harnessed
the good kind.
Because I think everything Tony is, Howard is more, because he's in the past. He's less woke. And Howard doesn't learn the things Tony goes through and learns, especially at this point. I think if it's the 40s and Howard is he has to be so young, right? He has to be like a 22-year-old billionaire inventor for him to be alive and have a kid who could be alive in the 2000s.
Yeah.
I have a big issue with the timeline of these two being related.
Well, because he grows into John Slattery by the time he hits the 70s.
I should be so lucky.
And so, so that would be like, I don't know, having a kid when he was, I don't know, how old is he? Do you think that he is when he's having Tony, like in his 50s?
I think he's an older,
70?
I think he's an older dad.
He dies in the 90s, right?
With the whole thing. Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Yeah. He dies in the early 90s. And so, my assumption has always been he had Tony when he was like 75.
Right. He's a real George Burns, right? Like that's
even worse. Well, okay, no, but this is kind of like suddenly, I don't know why this is like a thing with me, but like
the most important thing.
Well, because Steve is 25 right now. He was born in 1918, as we saw in his little card, and so it's 1943. So he's 25 years old, and you're making it sound like Howard is actually younger than Steve, which I had never really thought of before, but I guess maybe he is if he was born like maybe in the 20s.
I think he has to be a little younger than Steve to make the rest of his life make sense.
Wow.
That is weird to me.
This might be harder to swallow than the fact that the whole montage lasts 17 hours. Like, this is one of those mind-bending feats of age math that I can't quite rationalize.
It's best to normally just not think about it.
I think you're right. I think he must be 75.
Like,
that's important. Like, when did he make his millions?
Right.
As a millionaire investor.
It's a 14-year-old, I guess.
I guess. Just like Tony, very, very young.
Child genius.
Sort of techno ingenue.
I feel like he must have inherited. I feel like he probably...
Starks are old money.
Got some of that.
Oh, God, there's another legacy story to be told.
Didn't we see a Stark family crest in Iron Man when he was flying across the world at one point?
When are we going to see the, like, Braveheart era Stark story?
Who's taking them from bronze to steel weapons?
That's right. Oh, man.
Yeah.
Well, I love this idea that Howard is doing all of this just to poke, because I thought it was so funny that he says, let's go to Lucerne, which is like a hard left and then 250 miles away. It's like, really, that's quite the date. I mean, in the context of the Starks and the things they do for the women in their lives, it makes total sense.
Yeah.
But still, I mean, it would be an hour to get there and an hour to get back just to go have some fondue. Which, I mean, I guess Lucerne, because they need to go somewhere that's safe, and Switzerland was a neutral country, and so probably to that end probably the safest, unless they just turned around and went straight south down into Italy. But I don't know, it was such a funny thing for him to say. I guess it just struck me as like a total Stark thing that he probably was actually hoping to do, and maybe that's the thing. He's doing it to like needle Steve. At the same time, hey, if it works out, let's do it anyway.
Yes, he's like doing the calculations. There's like a 9% chance this works, but hey, Peggy Carter's a gorgeous woman.
I do like fondue. Maybe that's it. He loves that Liechtenstein fondue.
Fondue is delicious. I think it's probably harder to get in the 40s.
Yeah.
So he's not having it all the time. And also, if we're going the angle that Howard is doing it just to mess with Steve, he knows that. So Steve knows geography. We're learning that because he gets drop him in the woods, he'll find a base. Steve's probably calculating all the 250 miles away. But he's a young kid from Brooklyn. He has not heard of fondue. I think Howard, again, he's a sociopath. It is all this long thing just to screw with Steve.
That's really funny. That's really funny in the context of Steve's line, "Do you fondue?" referring to Steve, to Howard and
thing.
Peggy. I think he legit thinks it's a sex thing.
It sounds like it could be fondue. Oh.
Well, that's the joke. Like, I get the joke, but I also, now that there is even an iota that Steve is not jumping on top of the euphemism, so to speak, I find that that's just a little gem for this scene.
What I love about this moment, and part of like why I love Carter as a character, is that she doesn't owe him anything. She still is like, maybe I have a crush on this guy. I don't know. We're still like, maybe I'm his superior, but we're definitely just peers. And so any questioning look, she doesn't explain anything. She just keeps changing the subject and shifting on him. She owes him nothing. And again, for the time period it's in, that is awesome. And in like the realm of this is a rom-com type moment, it's awesome that she doesn't even she has no comment for him to help him either way.
Yeah, even her looks don't give much, and it is pretty perfect the way that it's constructed.
Mm-hmm.
it's a very funny scene, and the whole thing it plays. I don't know. It plays really well. I did do some fondue research because I was curious about that. I guess, it did actually originate in Switzerland. So it would make sense if you are going to go have fondue in 1943. Switzerland is probably the easiest place to get it because it hadn't been as widespread until the 50s. It really started kind of making its way. And then really the 60s is when it was popularized in North America. But it was promoted in Switzerland as a national dish by the Swiss Cheese Union in the 30s.
It's the Got Milk campaign.
The Swiss Cheese Union. They have a Swiss Cheese Union in Switzerland. I think that's fantastic.
Do you like cheese? Try our new fondue pot.
Well, I have to ask now, are either of you fans of fondue? And I mean that in the food sense.
You're not saying, do we fondue?
Do we?
I've been known to fondue. I do like, I am a fondue, I'm a fondue fan. I'm not a fondue freak. And I don't do like the cheesy fondues, weirdly. I do oil-based and oil and meats.
Yes.
And I do chocolate.
Chocolate fondue.
Wherein I just bathe in it. Is that weird? Is that fondue?
I think that's the ultimate fonduing. That is definitely what Steve was imagining.
That is the ultimate.
That's what Steve is picturing when he says, "Do you fondue?"
Them and hot chocolate together. I celebrate the entire fondue oeuvre of chocolate, oil, and cheese. Cheese and I don't get along, but that doesn't mean I don't eat it. I even have an at-home little chocolate fondue pot and the little discs. And that every 4 years I'll be like, oh yeah, there's that thing, and try to use it.
Oh, pull it out. Oh, right. I forgot we had this thing.
My daughter is a white chocolate fondue fanatic. And so she went to college. And so I don't get it as much. I suffer at her absence in my fondue.
I thought you were saying she went to college and just learned to love white chocolate. These liberal bastions are changing our kids. We are a milk chocolate household.
No.
What are they teaching? What am I paying for? Chocolate fondue is great. I grew up, we would oil fondue a lot. Cheese fondues I've had, but not nearly as frequently, but I do enjoy them. And I didn't know that you could actually do a wine fondue, which actually I'm like, why have I not known this? Because that sounds like the perfect way to do a fondue.
What do you?
No, wait. I'm going to need more about that. Yeah. Hot wine?
Yeah, it's fondue bourguignon. I don't know. I'm not even trying to say that.
I think hit the gas.
Yeah, but it's wine instead of oil, and you boil the wine, but then you season it with salt, pepper, garlic, onions, and herbs. And you could do a white wine version as well, and you dip meat, fish, or vegetables in it.
Wow,
that sounds amazing.
I don't know what is. That just sounds weird to me right now. I can't quite imagine
dip my
that.
steak in my mulled wine. Yeah, it's
in mulled right. I'm not feeling it. It's a holiday classic. I'm not loving it.
I think it's going to be better than you think. I'm going to do it, and you're all going to come over, and it's going to be wonderful.
Would you do it? Just do it. I don't know. I don't need to be a part of it. I just need a report of how it goes. Would you do it?
I will.
Please.
I will. I'm going to find a wine fondue recipe, and I will let you know how it goes.
Would you record a bonus episode of this podcast while you are doing it and talk about the whole experience? Would you do that?
Absolutely. Everybody needs to know.
The
world wants to know.
Yeah.
Movie
the world needs to know.
Melting pot, right. All right. So I have another question here. This is, I don't know if it seems odd or if I'm just reading into it or what, but does it seem weird? And I mean, it's World War II, I know, but when they're talking about like shooting at people and Steve's just like, I'll just shoot back. Does that seem weird for Captain America to like just be thinking about the way I stop people is with a gun? Does that seem like a strange thing, or is that puny Steve talking here?
No, I mean, puny Steve doesn't want to kill anybody, right?
Right.
So it's like, I think it's Bucky might be dead, is definitely in danger. I'm going to save heroes. I'm going to do what I have to do. Mixed, like he knows he's going to kill super Nazis. Mixed with we're in the middle of a rom-com back and forth thing. And so if he's like, you're going to get in trouble, aren't you going to be in trouble? Not if I shoot him first. Like, it feels like I'm flirting.
Yeah.
I read it more as I'm in the middle of flirting more than him being like, I'm going to kill every mofo I see.
Right. It's less of a Rambo sort of moment. I can see that.
Yeah, I can kind of see that. I also think like there's nothing unnatural about a guy with a gun in a war zone.
Yeah.
And I've never really had that issue, although I would propose getting shot versus taking the shield in the face. Like, which does more damage, do you think? Like, just generally, Cap is a high damage individual,
Yes.
right? Doesn't really matter what he throws at you. It's going to be, regrettable.
If he's like full forward shield, like the full face of the shield is hitting you, your nose and cheekbones and jaw are probably broken.
If it's in Frisbee mode,
You are dead. That thing is cutting you in half.
right?
Yeah.
Take his gun. He is still a militant individual.
My favorite, his unarmed attack is, I'm going to jump up and kick you. Like, double kick you is amazing. The both feet kick I love.
Yes.
The attacks from Steve sometimes make me laugh because of the way that he manages to use things. The shield is definitely one. I can't wait till we start talking about the pinball shield as it bounces around later in the movie. And in future movies for sure. But it is one of those things. Speaking of things that somehow somebody has to learn how to do right, but not Steve, apparently. But
Also Magic Shield.
well, speaking of shields, do you notice when he's talking about his shield, he actually hits it and there's a little ping, like it is metal of some sort.
It is metal. It's like tin.
I think it's some of the sheet metal, Little Timmy from like the movie
Right.
Reel, the newsreel.
Timmy?
Yeah, it is that, because it also I swear it indents a little when he whacks it. Like, it is just slightly better than him having a bunch of aluminum foil.
Right.
The shield cracks me up that he thinks that this is a thing to use at this moment, but it is what it is. All right, so we've got this great moment. We've got the transponders here as Peggy, as she avoids replying to him and just gives him a transponder, which is just the greatest block moment. It's so funny. It's just like, here's your transponder. Like, there's the end of that conversation.
I love that line, though. Is this going to work? It's been tested more than you, buddy.
Yeah.
Right? Like, that is a great line and so on the nose.
Because this is Steve's first, other than I guess he hunted down the guy who assassinated Erskine, this is his first use of powers, right? Like,
Yeah.
And he's already miles behind enemy lines.
Yeah.
And that, I think it goes back to Howard is just tweaking Steve's nose.
Right.
We've had theories about what else Steve has been doing on the USO show tour, and we think they probably have him doing, quote, feats of strength for the audience, which, of course, they think is just stage magic. But, of course, he's just really just picking up motorcycles or whatever. What is funny about the moment about that tested more than you, pal, is I think it's actually a moment for Steve to try throwing something at Howard also, because he has seen the failure of the flying car. I mean, I don't think Howard knows he was there, but ever since, like, every time he is seeing Howard, things don't seem to be working. And when he shows up in the lab, Howard seems kind of like it should be fine. I think, like, he seems a little doubtful, and so I think that Steve's also throwing a little shade at Howard here when he's just like, "Are you sure this thing works?" So I think there's a little give and take going on here. I like that.
Yeah, and Steve said Howard is very Elon Musk-ish with like a lot of big promises, but when I test things in front of people, they go horribly bad. Either the car, oh my goodness, the car dropping when it's supposed to fly versus didn't Musk shoot his bulletproof car and it just broke the window?
That's right, on the Cybertruck or something. Yeah.
So really, the films keep comparing like Tony to Elon Musk, but really it's Howard.
It was Howard
who is really the Elon Musk character here.
Oh, that's funny.
That is very funny. All right, so we get to this point in the minute where suddenly whoever's below, we're assuming it's Hydra, not necessarily the Nazis at this point, but Hydra is shooting at the plane. They're under fire, and Steve makes the decision he's going to jump. He goes and opens the door, and he and Peggy have a little kind of have it out a bit because she says, "Get back here. We're going to take you all the way in." And he's like, "Forget that. As soon as I'm clear, turn this thing around to get the hell out of here." And that's pretty much the end of the minute. But how does that decision work for the two of you as far as like, no, I'm just going to jump here versus let's weather the bullets and go all the way in? Thoughts on the decision making here?
I think, of course, he would jump.
Mm-hmm.
And that just seems like a totally natural thing. He was going to take a Jeep or possibly run anyway. And he wants them to be safe. Like he,
This is the Steve who jumped on the dummy grenade.
Yeah, right.
He doesn't want other people to get hurt. This is the Steve who, in the Avengers, calls out Tony. He's like, "You're not the guy who makes a self-sacrifice play." He does not make plans. He just will always sacrifice himself.
Yeah.
Because maybe Steve doesn't want to live that long. I don't know.
I guess my question there, though, is because Peggy, moments earlier, said Stark is the best civilian pilot I've ever seen. He's mad enough to brave this airspace. It makes me wonder, it's like, well, why are they flying so low? Would it have made more sense for them to kind of maybe fly a little bit higher so they were more out of bullet range and maybe less visible, and then drop him in actually over the target instead of the way that they've done this? Or at this point, should they just, fly higher? I don't know. Any thoughts?
Yeah, I think that's why it's Steve is gut and instant reactions.
Yeah.
So she didn't have time to be like, yeah, he'll fly us higher. Steve was like, nope, I'm going to jump out of this plane right now.
Yeah.
Is part of this, too, like some sort of demonstration? Because in later movies, as Steve grows and evolves, he becomes more thoughtful. And in this movie, in this sequence particularly, we get what Steve looks like when he's knee-jerk, right? When he's just reacting on emotion and he's not rational. And I think that's part of it. Like, he's just going to freight train his way to the destination, and he's not going to be thoughtful and precise.
Yeah.
You guys in past episodes have talked about the meta-narrative, right, of the entire MCU in a way of the big plot-wise, but I think this is the meta-narrative of Steve as a hero. This is young, brash, even though he's still virtuous, but young, brash, very untested Steve.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, because I'd love the next line out of Peggy or Howard's mouth. It's like, no, I'll just pull up and it'll be fine. And Steve's like, I'm out of here, see ya.
At least he is wearing a parachute, right? We don't have to explore his...
I did not think that. But this starts the trend of Captains America will jump out of planes without explaining things.
Jump out of everything.
Right, as people are still trying to tell them, but I just need to tell you one more thing. Yeah. And this, I guess, it really is a trend in the Marvel Cinematic Universe up to this point. We've seen Tony Stark hop out of planes. We've seen Bruce Banner hop out of planes. Have we seen Thor jump off of anything? I mean, he's got his hammer, so I guess it doesn't really matter because he just kind of swings his hammer and he goes where he needs to. But so far,
he's always up and
they're
down.
they're all jumping out of things.
Yeah.
So I guess it's a Marvel thing. So I guess the question is going to be, who's going to be the first hero that we get to who doesn't jump out of a plane?
Who looks around and is like, I'm going to land it, thank you.
Yeah, right. I'll ride it all the way down. Somebody pick me up at the airport.
That feels like a Hawkeye move. He's just like, no, I'll stay here.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Right.
Completely.
All right. Well, I don't know if I have anything else for this minute. Do either of you have any last thoughts?
I do not.
I think we did it.
All right. Well, Mike, tell everyone again about your shows and where they can tune in.
Sure. If you like comic book things, and if you're listening to this, you probably do, you should check out the Superhero Show, where every week we watch and review every single live action TV show based on comic books. And if you're more into the movies, check out Movie of the Year. Every season, we pick a year, build a bracket, and make them fight against each other to determine the winner of that year, wherever podcasts are sold. I like Overcast. Now I'm going to start. I decided that you can make playlists. Overcast is the best. Stop using that native Apple podcast app. It's literally the worst one out there. Check out Overcast. You're going to love it. Not sponsored. I just love them. Not
sponsored. As a fan of Overcast, though, I thumb up that. Two thumbs up. What am I trying to say? That was awful.
Just thumbing it right up there.
Oh my God.
Sometimes I just need to stop talking. Well, we will check out the show. Check out the show notes for the links to all of his shows. Mike, thank you so much for joining us again today.
Thank you.
And Pete, thank you.
I'm going to try and thumb up minute 58 tomorrow. Thumb it right up.
Until next time, true believers.
Marvel Movie Minute is a production of True Story FM. Engineering by Andy Nelson. This season's music is Spread the News by Anthony Vega, and this season's show art is by Winston Yabo. Find the show at truestory.fm, and if your podcast app allows ratings and reviews, consider doing that for this show.